Hi, I'm John Paul, the Peter Paul and Elizabeth Hagen Professor of the History of Christianity at United Lutheran Seminary. I'm based in Philadelphia, but I live in a small town in Wisconsin where we relocated in 2017 to be near my aged parents and to live on a lake with 3 acres of woods. I'm delighted to be a part of this accelerator workshop, and I look forward to a rich and lively 2 days of conversation. What I bring to the table is a long-standing interest in addressing religious violence that doesn't necessarily appear to be religious. I'm especially interested in religious hybridity, in the ways that religious discourses and practices migrate, and the ways that those discourses and practices then get mobilized by people for harm to or destruction of life, which is how I define what violence is, following a maximalist definition that sees violence not only as physical, but also as social, economic, and cultural. How I define religion is even more complex, but builds on Bruce Lincoln's work and the Chicago School in short. The theme of this workshop brings together several of my interests in sacred space, in religious violence, and in U.S. racism. These interests go back a long way. For me, I spent 6 years as co-chair of the AAR Religion, Social Conflict, and Peace Group, and I've sporadically attended meetings of the Colloquium on Violence and Religion over the years. My book, Shopping Malls and Other Sacred Spaces, explored how devotion to the sacred places of shopping malls, Disney theme parks, and the suburban home focused on rituals of domestic sanitation and lawn care, for instance, might have generated harm to or destruction of life. Take dandelions. That book led to my participation in a documentary film titled Malls Are Us, directed by Helene Klodowski, that followed up on my plotline about malls as religiously violent places and added a global dimension. More recently, my book, Empire of Sacrifice, The Religious Origins of American Violence, analyzed violence along the lines of age, race, and gender in U.S. history, suggesting that the American empire was forged through what I call innocent domination, built on a set of discourses and practices that established boundaries and exclusions, sacrifices, in effect, and that concentrated power for a particular group of people, white nationalists, devoted to the American project. Most recently, in what I thought was going to be a venture into happier terrain, I began the research in 2010. I completed the first critical biography of the Turkish Muslim preacher Fethullah Gulen. As you may know, in fact, that book also became a study in a kind of religious violence, since Gulen became enemy number one of the Islamic government in Turkey, and people even vaguely associated with them became targets for direct and indirect violence, including closing schools, publishing houses, newspapers, and television stations, and firing thousands of civil servants for their alleged relationship with the so-called terrorist Gulen. I'm still trying to find that happier research trajectory and have about 2/3 of a book done under the tentative title, A Coming Religious Peace. I'm sharing with you a very rough draft of chapter 1 of that book entitled Sacrificing Religions, which reiterates with different examples the argument of empire of sacrifice about religious violence along hybrid lines in what some have called civil or cultural religions. As far as the research I hope to continue to contribute to our conversation, I'll be working on the religiosity of Dylan Roof, the shooter at Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, as a case study of religious hybridity without accountability. Such lack of accountability for religious constructs that fuel violence is the primary problem that results when scholars and public policymakers narrowly locate religion solely in the category of traditions and fail to recognize how religious discourses and practices migrate and attach themselves to other power systems and institutions, including those based on race. Roof was a Lutheran, nominally, but the real religion he practiced was something altogether different and deserving of careful delineation as anything but an anomaly in the contemporary United States. I plan to connect Roof's case in what can only be a suggestive link to the recent closing of the only Lutheran historically black college, Concordia College Selma, in 2018, and to the religiosity of Donald Trump, nominally Presbyterian, to demonstrate how an analysis of Ruth's religion, call it for the time being white male racist civil religion, might help explain a wide range of social and political phenomena in American culture, including attacks on houses of worship and at other religious sites. This is a little long, but hope you endure, and really look forward to working with you all.